looked at Proverbs chapter 1, and Psalms and Proverbs are two of my most favorite books of the Bible. There's other ones that I like really well also, but I especially like Proverbs because I've always been one that I want to know if I'm on the right track. I want to know if what I'm doing pleases God, and when I find out that I'm not pleasing God, I'm not happy about it, and I ask Him to help me. Well, first of all, you got to have knowledge as to what's right and what's wrong. And we also know that in scriptures, it says, it tells us to study to show ourselves approved, workmen that needeth not to be ashamed. And there's another spot that tells us that when he's talking about which commandment is the greatest, or is the first, we're to love God because He first loved us, and we're to love each other. We're to love others like we do ourselves, because when we honor those two, all the rest of them fall in place, because our desire to do things God's way, because we know His way is the best way and it's above our understanding. And He tells us, if you do that which our instruction book, the Bible, is right, you will be blessed. When you do that which is not right, you will be cursed. Very kind of just a different way of saying everything has consequences. When you do good things happen. When you do bad things happen. And it might not happen right away, or it might happen right away when you make wrong choices or right choices. But the bottom line is, if you constantly ask God to help you make right choices, and you get in your word and you study so that you are aware of how God views it, then your life will be more blessed. That's not to say bad things won't happen, because we have other people on this earth, and sometimes we get caught up in their wrong choices. And, like somebody who decides to run a red light, and you happen to be going by the traffic signal, and bam, they hit you. And then you are subject to consequences of their wrong choice to go through that red light. So sometimes things happen to us that we didn't ask for, but if we do things God's way, even what we go through can be a blessing to us and to others. Because, like, even when I went through my bout with cancer, it wasn't fun, no. But you know what? I knew God was with me, and He helped me through it. I had to go through it, and I didn't like it going through it, but He helped me go through it. And, each person's a little bit different, what happens with them and how God deals with it. He made us each unique. They say there's no two snowflakes alike, but we are compared to the snowflakes in some writings out there, because when you look at snowflakes, they're all different designs if you look at them with magnifying glass. And we people, even twins, have differences, even identical twins. And so He made each of us different, so it stands to reason that there's going to be some things that are different in each person's life. And so they can be right or they can be wrong, but there's going to be some differences. And our attitude is what God is after. He wants us to have the attitude of obeying Him and trusting Him. So anyway, Proverbs is full of expressions and scenarios and stories. Like a lot of the stories that Jesus taught were parables. And in the parables, it usually compares doing things right way and doing things the wrong way and what the results are. It gives you kind of an idea, but he uses examples of things to clarify a point that he's making. Like, if you sow sparingly, you reap sparingly. If things like that. I mean, like if you're growing a garden, if you make a small garden and you only plant a handful of seeds, you're not going to get, I mean, it's going to multiply, but it's not going to be as many as it would be if you did a big garden. And so that there's different things like that that help you see the pros and cons. And so the Proverbs gives you a lot of this, only it's the pros and cons of doing things God's way versus not doing it God's way. What can happen? And I just think it's really awesome to study. So we did chapter 1, and today I would like for us to do chapter 2. We're going to follow our same plan that we usually do, where I pick on Dave to read from the King James Version, and I pick on Josie to read from the Living Bible, and I go on ahead and do the Amplified. And we read a few verses out of all three of those versions. Sometimes they pretty much say it the same way, but sometimes it says it, words it a little bit different, and it brings out something, maybe a new thought that we hadn't thought about before. So if we're ready to go, if I can get Dave to read chapter 2 in Proverbs, verses 1 through 5, please.
My son, if thou wilt receive my words and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God.
Okay. Josie, will you read those same verses? And then when I'm done reading the verses, we'll open it up for discussion if anybody has a comment.
Every young man who listens to me and obeys my instructions will be given wisdom and good sense. Yes, if you want better insight and discernment and are searching for them as you would for lost money, for hidden treasure, then wisdom will be given you, and knowledge of God himself. You will soon learn the importance of reverence for the Lord and of trusting him.
Okay. My son, if you will receive my words and treasure up my commandments within you, making your ear attentive to skillful and godly wisdom, and inclining and directing your heart and mind to understanding, applying all your powers to the quest for it. Yes, if you cry out for insight, raise your voice for understanding. If you seek wisdom as for silver and search for skillful and godly wisdom as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the reverent and worshipful fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of our omniscient God. Any comments?
Well, he's telling us to seek him in his word, just like those who would go after digging for silver and gold.
You got anything to add to that, Josie? I think the key is what Dave just mentioned. We need to seek God's wisdom in everything that we do as fervently as many people would if they were going to go dig for gold or silver or any of that, or do the little panhandling, not panhandling, where they take the pan and they shake it around and try to get nuggets of gold out of it and stuff. So, and they do that fervently. Some people may go after a new car or a new truck fervently. I mean, we're excited and we're going to save up for it, and we're going to go looking for just the right one for us. And, we really make an effort. So what he's saying is make an effort to find out what God's wisdom is, so that when we have a circumstance arise, we will be prepared to deal with it in a godly manner. And so I remember hearing somebody one time, and I don't remember who, say something to the effect of, if we would pray, praying is talking to God. If we would pray to God all the time, go to him before we go getting the phone out and calling our friends and neighbors and preachers or whoever, we go to God first. If we'd fervently go to God first, like we do when it's in an emergency, like when me and Chuck and Melissa got during a birthday celebration for her when she was a kid, we got caught in the middle of a tornado and we were in our vehicle. And Chuck told me afterwards, he said, I never heard you pray that earnestly and that hard and that, like that before. I've never heard you pray like that, because I was praying out loud. I had her on the floorboard and I was over her, and I was praying for our safety and for God to help us get through that tornado, because all the buildings that were around us were made out of sheets of metal, and they were all falling apart and blowing off and hitting the car. And they tell you if you're in a car during a tornado, you need to get out and get in the ditch. Well, we did that, we would have been hamburger meat. We would not have been safe. Our chances of survival were better in the car than it was outside of the car at that moment. And so we stayed in the car, and Chuck just kept trying to drive around the debris and at an angle to hopefully drive out away from where the tornado was going. And God answered our prayers, and he got us through it safely, and we were still able to drive the car afterwards, which was amazing after being bombarded by all that. And there were no windows that were broken out to give us problems with glass. So, I mean, it was amazing how God took care of us. But if I would pray that diligently and that hard and seek fervently with everything that I was petitioning God for, he's going to answer prayer anyway, but there's like more power. There's more power. So what the end result is more of a blessing when we're praying fervently every time we talk to God, whether we want something or not. If we're passionate about it, if we really mean it, deep down inside, we're not just reciting a prayer, oh, most holiest God, thou art wonderful. If that's the way we spoke all the time, it'd be different. But that old English stuff is not really how we talk nowadays. And when we want to be passionate about it and really go after him, like when you're in an emergency situation, you usually don't do the thou and these and all that stuff. You speak how you normally speak, and you're just going, help me, Jesus. Sometimes it's just that, help me, Jesus. But anyway, he wants us to show reverence, respect for him, and recognize how powerful he is. He is able to do above and beyond anything we could understand or think. Okay, let's do the same thing again with verses 6 through 10.
For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment, and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness and judgment, and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul.
Go ahead and read 11.
Discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee.
Okay. Josie, 6 through 11.
For the Lord grants wisdom. His every word is a treasure of knowledge and understanding. He grants good sense to the godly, his saints. He is their shield, protecting them from guarding their pathway. He shows how to distinguish right from wrong, how to find the right decisions every time. For the wisdom and truth will enter the very center of your being, filling your life with joy. You will be given the sense to stay away from evil men who want you to be their partners in crime.
Okay. Okay.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, that was 11, right?
I guess it goes together here. 11,
Oh,
12,
well, go on
13.
ahead and read it how it goes together. We may change our mind how we're doing this.
Who want you to be their partners in crime, men who turn from God's ways to walk down dark and evil paths.
Okay. Okay, so actually what you read goes from verse
11, 12, 13.
yeah, it goes to 15.
Oh,
What
okay.
what you read about the path is 15 in mine. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go back to verse 6. Well, before I do that, Dave, you want to go ahead and read verses 12 through 15, so we'll be in the same spot at the end as what Josie just read? Because you already read 6 through 11.
Yeah. So verse 12, to deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speaketh forward things, who leave the paths of righteousness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil and delight in the forwardness of the wicked, whose ways are crooked, and they forward in their paths.
Okay. And then the Amplified says, for the Lord gives skillful and godly wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He hides away sound and godly wisdom and stores it for the righteous, those who are upright and in right standing with him. He is a shield to those who walk uprightly and in integrity, that he may guard the paths of justice. Yes, he preserves the way of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness, justice, and fair dealing in every area and relation. Yes, you will understand every good path. For skillful and godly wisdom shall enter into your heart, and knowledge shall be pleasant to you. Discretion shall watch over you, understanding shall keep you, to deliver you from the way of the evil and the evil men, from men who speak perverse things and are liars, men who forsake the paths of uprightness, to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil and delight in the perverseness of evil, who are crooked in their ways, wayward and devious in their paths. All right. Any comments?
It speaks what it's said.
It's pretty clear. Yeah. It's advising us to do it God's way, no matter what. And when we understand what his way is, we are going to reap what we have sown, because when you make right choices, it causes in the long run good things to happen. And I looked up about understanding, because verses 1 through 5 are pretty much about the necessity and rewards of understanding. And understanding, some of the things it said about understanding is it's having insight, comprehension, good judgment, perception, able to discern between good and evil, a shared feeling, a knowing of, and shared feeling would be when we understand God's viewpoint on it, it's shared with God, a knowing of what others are going through and responding with wisdom and compassion. Sometimes we wonder why we go through things. Well, you know what? Sometimes when we go through it, we have a better understanding of the situation, and we can help somebody else go through it. And they're more likely to listen to us because they know that we've been there, done that. When a single person tries to tell a married family couple how to deal with their family, they kind of look at them like, how do you know? You never raised any kids. But if they've raised kids, they could say the exact same thing, and the people would listen to them, or at least recognize that they had some understanding about what they were talking about. And when we've gone through something that somebody else has gone through, we have more compassion. There's a Indian saying, and I won't get it right, I know I won't, but something about don't judge me if you haven't walked in my shoe moccasins, or in my shoes, or it came from the Indian, so they said moccasins at first, and later on they kind of adapted it to, if you haven't walked in my shoes, don't judge me. Because there's things when we go through it that we understand that we didn't understand before we went through it. And so
there's a lot of situations, and they always seem to involve people, because people, when they're not talking to you in a normal conversation, and people get into yelling and screaming and you name it, because of they got into their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
They let their feelings move them, and they're coming at you, and it's probably best to hold your peace and just let people just do what they want, because
Let them vent.
you can't reason and try to straighten things up or to clear things up or whatever when you're trying to respond to them, because they're all emotional.
Mm-hmm.
They're
not listening.
They can't comprehend. They're just in their moment of emotion or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's best just to hold your peace and let God deal with it, because he will help you to whatever God needs you to do. He's going to help you. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to allow yourself to be pulled into that emotionally, because it doesn't work anyways. The outcome just doesn't help. Getting pulled into situations like that, there's always going to be someone trying to push your buttons or pull your strings, or for whatever reason, and it just leaves you all messed up. A day, your whole day is ruined because of it. So it's best to just hold your peace and let God have his way with you.
Right. Kind of goes along with the soft answer turneth away wrath, what you just described. And when we can respond in a calm, cool manner, we're not feeding their fire. And because when there is no argument, there's only one person. But when another person joins in, the argument gets more heated and more heated and more heated, and everybody trying to state their case because the emotions are involved. It feeds the emotions. So you're right about that. When we respond with wisdom and compassion without judgment or rejection, we are answering the soft answer that turneth away wrath, or we are just plain taking away any elements that might contribute to the argument and make the fire grow hotter. And that is good. And Hebrews 4:15 tells us that God understands. So when we study to show ourselves approved, it's very helpful for us to read the Word, study the Word, ask God to help us understand His Word and understand His will, help us to understand ourselves. Like, for instance, if you know what pushes your buttons, then you're better able to guard yourself, like with a shield or a buckler. Now, a buckler is a smaller shield, but you have a way to not let somebody push your buttons when you recognize that's what they're trying to do. My mother used to say, when you're dealing with a bully, try to figure out what they want to accomplish and do the opposite. When they want you to show fear and they want you to show all this, don't you let them see it. Don't you let them see the fear. Even if you still feel it, don't let them see it. And if they're wanting you to run or hit or whatever, do the opposite. Well, that's kind of a way, sort of like turning the other cheek, but it's also a way of a soft answer, turn away wrath. And I've actually experienced doing something similar to that in my youth, and before I even came to know the Lord as my personal Savior. And it worked for me. I'm not going to go into the details of it. I've done it before, but you probably already heard it anyway. But in the verses 6 through 10, it tells us that the understanding comes from God. When we understand what's going on, we can deal with it in a more godly way, and the outcome will be better. And then verses 11 through 15 talk about discretion, which is involving a lot of things, like respecting confidentiality, like whatever is being discussed between you and somebody else, either in an argument or correction mode or whatever, doesn't need to be shared with other people. Usually. Now, there's instances even in the Bible where they bring it before the whole church, but that's after they tried to get the matter resolved privately. And it didn't work that way. So, but discretion is also involves sound judgment, abiding by the rules or the laws, or by God's rules. That's why we need to study to show ourselves approved, so that we can understand what would Jesus do. If Jesus were here and he was dealing with this situation, what would he do? Because his ways are better and higher than our ways. Discretion has to do with properly managing our time, our money, our attention to what's going on and around us, thus preventing unwanted problems. And the different circumstances, it helps us deal with the certain circumstances that's going on. We sure have lots of them in this world right now. Or at least we probably don't have much more than what we already had from years past. It's like our ancestors way back then, they had their own set. They were different from what we were dealing with, but they were still just as difficult to deal with. But if we know God's way of thinking, it makes it easier for us to know how to deal with these different things that come our way. And God's discretion is a perfect example for us. He's not careless or heedless. He weighs the circumstances. He has all knowledge. He knows what they're going to do and what they're not going to do in each situation. So I found this one little saying, and then we'll continue reading on to the end. There's a little quote I'd like to quote. I don't know who did the quoting. I don't remember, but wisdom is the grace to know what to do. Discernment is the grace to know how to do it. And discretion is the grace to know what you can do. And it's also realizing you don't need to tell everything that you know to other people. And I've been guilty of, do you know what so-and-so did? That type of thing. And it's really not necessary for us to spread it any further. It should be kept between that person and you and God, unless it follows the format, which I didn't look up in the scriptures, where it says, if you go to them in private and you try to settle a matter and it doesn't work, then you can bring it before the church. But we don't need to air everybody's dirty laundry, as they say. And that is, to me, I have more fingers pointing my direction than I do yours, as well as anybody, because it's easy to fall into that trap of, do you know what so-and-so did? Well, it's really nobody else's business except for whose business it needs to be, which is God's, yours, and that person. So anyway. All right, let's go on ahead and do... Let's just go on ahead and do 16 through 22. I was going to break it up a little bit, but I think we'll just go on ahead and read 16 through 22. So I'll let you start, Dave.
To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her mouth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life, that thou mayest walk in the way of good men, and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it.
Okay, Josie, 16 through 22, please.
Only wisdom from the Lord can save a man from the flattery of prostitutes. These girls have abandoned their husbands and flaunted the laws of God. Their houses lie along the road to death and hell. The men who enter from them are doomed. None of these men will ever be the same again. Follow the steps of the godly instead, and stay on the right path, for only good men enjoy life to the full. Evil men lose the good things they might have had, and they themselves shall be destroyed.
Okay. Discretion shall watch over you, understanding shall keep you, to deliver you from the alien woman, from the outsider with her flattering words, who forsakes the husband and guide of her youth, and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house sinks down to death, and her paths to the spirits of the dead. None who go to her return again, neither do they attain or regain the paths of life. So may you walk in the way of good men, and keep to the paths of the consistently righteous, the upright, in right standing with God. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the men of integrity, blameless and complete in God's sight, shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the treacherous shall be rooted out of it. What's your comments?
Well, I'm sure the founding fathers would be surprised that America is still here, but it's not in the condition that they would approve of.
True.
Well, I think this is talking about people that listen to other, you could say demons, or their own mind, their own, they're not listening to their husbands, which is, I think, like God, they're not listening. And so they have to pay for it because they're not doing the good things that they could be doing.
Kind of like Eve.
Yeah.
She was given a good life, and she listened to the wrong voice. That serpent wasn't really a snake. It was another person who was speaking words that were not for God's way of doing it. And when we don't do things God's way, things don't turn out so good for us. And we get deeper and deeper. It's like quicksand. It pulls us in, gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
And then my Bible has an explanation of losing. It says, lose the good things they might have had literally shall be cut off from the land. And the land is promises. Oh.
Yeah, we have, it's like there are,
God.
the way God has things set up, because his way is the best way in every circumstance. When we don't do things his way, his hands are tied. Like, he can't, well, it's not about money, it's about giving, having not a greedy spirit. But when in the Old Testament told us about tithing, that was for our own good. And just because it doesn't say we should continue to tithe, since we are no longer under the law, wouldn't it make sense to do more than tithing at times, at least? Because now that we understand what Christ has done for us and we're grateful for it. Anyway, there's just different things that we would do different when we're doing things God's way. We will have desires that are not put on black and white pages, that are to serve God in whatever way he wants. And I've heard of people who God put it on their heart to give a car to somebody, or to help them buy a new house or something like that, and they knew it was God's word, and they did it. They followed the directions, even though whether they felt like they could afford it personally, or if they had to get other people involved and everybody worked together for the same goal. When they obeyed God, it was a blessing to them and to others. And it says in the New Testament that God came he sent his son to die for us. But anyway, I'm not wording it quite right, but it mentioned not just for saving our soul, but that we can have the good life that God wanted us to have. Because when we choose to be directed by him and we choose to follow him, listen to him, obey him, things are going to be better for us. It's like the one who knows to do right and refuses to do right is not going to get the blessings that somebody who knows to do right and they put forth an effort to cooperate with God to do the right. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm explaining myself for good, but anyway, he's comparing the evil with the people who are trying to do things God's way and trying to let us know that when we don't do things God's way, we are robbing ourselves. And we look at it wrong when we go to church, and I don't talk about money very often, but and y'all do a great job, so don't think I'm criticizing. I think everybody does the best they can, and they're doing a good job. But there are churches where I've been a part of some big churches, and if everybody in those churches would just give $1, which is not a tenth, it's not a tenth, their bills would be paid more. They'd be paid and they'd have more to do more stuff with. But some of them, everybody just thought, well, look at all the people here. They don't need my money. Or they would gripe if they said anything about, trying to tithe. Well, tithing's not because the church needs it. Tithing's not because, well, even though they might need it to pay the bills, but it's not that God needs your money. He's trying to teach us not to be stingy and selfish. He's trying to help us have a giving heart to help others. And when he blesses us with more than enough, to take that extra, that's when our cup runneth over, to take that extra and help somebody. To not just be thinking of ourselves all the time. And that's, when God has us do something, it's for our good. It's good for us to consider more than ourselves and all that we think we want and all that we think we need. I mean, sometimes some of the things we think we need, we don't really need them. We can live without them, but we want them so bad. We say, I need this and I need that. So we just need to, it all goes back to that trusting God, obeying God, and trusting God, obeying God and trusting God. And if you find out that you misunderstood what his will was, say, I'm sorry, God, I misunderstood what you said. Help me to get back on the right path and do it the way you want it done. But we don't need to condemn ourselves because maybe we thought something was of God and we misunderstood somehow. I don't know if I have any other comments. I think that's it. But if any of you have more comments, feel free to jump in there. Well, if we're done with our comments, how about prayer requests?